You're listening to the Deidre Reigel Hope and Healing Radio Show, where your voice matters. We're glad you're here and believe you will be too. And now, Deidre Reigel with today's guest.
You are listening to the Deidre Reigel Hope and Healing Radio Show, and today I have the deep privilege and the honor of having Halie Loren on my show as a guest. Halie, welcome to this show.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be with you today.
Well, I was last in your audience in January of this year, and I hated for that show to end. We got just a brief time to visit afterward, and so I just want to say what a delight it is for us to have this time to chat together, especially knowing how busy you are promoting your new album. So thank you for being here. And Halie, if you'll permit me just to brag on you for just a moment, and yes, I absolutely want to.
Oh, if you must.
I must. As an artist myself, I must. So I'd like to tell our listeners just a little bit about you. Originally from Alaska, this gal is, and then, of course, now she's an Oregon native, and she's on worldwide tour. And this is a gal who came into the music industry at the age of 13 and went on as a very young woman to enter songwriting contests and even won the Billboard World Song Contest as a young woman. Went on to Nashville in her early 20s. In 2006, came out with her debut album, and now, 10 albums later, she has just been produced by Troy Miller, who's one of the top producers in our industry. He's produced the likes of Amy Winehouse. And this album, to the best of my knowledge, and Halie, correct me if I'm not right here, but I believe this album has already debuted at #1 on the Japan Billboard charts. Is that correct?
Honestly, I actually have no idea. I've had 3 albums that have debuted at the Billboard #1 spot in Japan on the jazz charts, but I've been so busy and so caught up with doing shows and interacting with fans around this album that I've not really been keeping track of its chart position.
Spoken like the true artist. Spoken like the true artist you are, Halie. Just wonderful news. And what a journey for you from a young girl to where you are now. And I offer you my congratulations. And I'd like to share with our listeners. Oh, you're so welcome. I'd like to share with our listeners before I start asking you some questions. 2 of the most recent reviews, and Troy Miller, as I say, one of the top producers in our industry, has said about your songs, and I quote, "Halie's songs are some of the most pleasing and melodically beautiful I've heard." And then, according to my notes, the Orca Sound in Montreal has said about your voice, and let me find that quote, that it is a warm, rich, and pleasing voice. And you are lauded as someone who sings pop smart jazz. So I'd like to ask the first question. Talk to me about pop smart jazz, Halie. What is pop smart jazz that you sing?
Well, I think in some ways, I mean, of course it probably has its own meaning to different listeners. A lot of the music that I make is jazz influenced, but it runs the gamut through a lot of different genre influences. And like my entire recording career, has had a healthy dose of inspiration from jazz tradition, from whether it's the American Songbook or more kind of jazzing up versions of pop songs that people already know and love. But it's all had also a lot of influence from my growing up years of listening to blues, R&B, folk, pop. All of that's made its way into my artistry, whether it's original music of mine or whether it's a cover song that I'm doing a version of, which, a lot of my previous albums were very based in a lot of in covering music other people have written, whether it's 100 years ago or 10 years ago. But with this latest endeavor, with my new album, From the Wild Sky, that kind of throws to me, in my opinion, of kind of how to describe a genre, I guess, it crosses so many different genres. I think pop smart jazz fits it just as well as jazz smart pop or blues infused folk. Or there's a lot of different genres that come to play in this new record. But that's a good question, and it's one I don't know how to cleanly answer.
I think it's a great answer, and having been in your audience, you do magically combine all of these influences very beautifully into one very pop smart jazz package. And of course the fact that you are so multilingual and you can move from one essence of a song, one style of a song to another so freely is really refreshing as an audience member. And I remember the night I was in your audience, I hated for the evening to be over. And so I'm one of your biggest fans, I'm sure. So you have a new album. We've already mentioned that. It's called From the Wild Sky. It's been produced by Troy Miller. And so it's a new direction. This album is clearly a new direction for you. And I'd like to ask you, what inspired you to go in this new direction, Halie?
It is a new direction in some ways, and in other ways, it's kind of it's a very much a return to the center of where my artistry really began. In that I've been a songwriter for as long as I've been a professional musician. I started writing songs when I was 13 years old, and it grew along with everything else that I was doing vocally, musically, trying to learn the music business. It was all kind of coming together all at the same time for me in my life at a very young age. And so being a songwriter has been a huge part of my internal artistic identity. And it's made its way into my recordings in small ways. Every album that I've released up to this point has had at least a couple of original songs. But this time I felt really called, for the last few years really, but this time I decided to really act on it. I've been really called to put a spotlight on that part of my voice in the figurative sense, my voice of what I wanted to say. And these songs, when they came through, and most of them came through sometime in the last couple of years for me, they were really insistent in my heart that they wanted to live out in the world, and they wanted to kind of exist in this context and the project where it really is a very personal direction. What transpired to make it possible was I supported a lot of musicians' friends' campaigns on fundraising sites like Kickstarter, like GoFundMe, like Indiegogo for years, and I've been mulling the idea of doing it myself and for a future project. And this time really felt like the time to try that, to make the plunge and try something entirely new, not only with the music, but with my approach to it. And so that's how this came to be. Was I was able to raise funds through Kickstarter, through my fans around the world, funding this album with their pledges, and that's, of course, what enabled me to bring in Troy Miller and all of the amazing recording experiences, et cetera, surrounding making this album. So a lot of things had to fall into place, including just finding the bravery to shift course and do something that really spoke to my heart in a totally different way.
Well, you bring up a very good point about the bravery to shift your course. And it sounds to me, Halie, like this has been a full circle for you. Is that accurate?
I would say that is very accurate. Yeah.
Yes. You're really coming back to your songwriting roots, where you have something to emote, you have something to say. And I think that's very important for those of us who are truly artists, and you are. So, you've made 10 albums now, and that's remarkable in anyone's career. 10 albums. So, what was different about the creation of From the Wild Sky in comparison to your previous albums?
Mm-hmm. A lot. A lot. For one thing, of course, the way that I was able to get support from the community around this album before it even came into existence was a brand new thing for me. With the Kickstarter campaign, that really changed my whole approach to it and my way of thinking about it. But then, of course, having Troy Miller, having a producer not only a producer of his level, but to have a producer whose dedicated job is just the production of an album of my music was a brand new thing for me as well. I've always self-produced. So I've always, along either by myself or along with oftentimes Matt Treader, who had playing piano with me for many years. We've been a creative team on many different projects. We've always done the undertaking of the massive production effort and the engineering and kind of a DIY sort of thing with all of these other albums. And this time I really just wanted to break out of my comfort zone in every way in order to see what would happen. And so Troy Miller agreed to work together. He really liked the music, and he's the one who set things into motion in terms of getting the musicians that we had for this album into place and setting up the recording studio times, because we ended up recording in London and in New York. And that's the first time I've ever recorded in the studio across the country or across the world from where I am. And the players that he brought in were just have these amazing backstories, and they're incredible musicians with so many accomplishments to their names. Everything about the creation of this process was different. I got to be really focus on my role as the narrator of these stories and the originator of these stories, and just use my voice in a totally focused way that previously, I haven't had the luxury of just being able to kind of disassociate from all the technical aspects while I'm trying to dig deep creatively. And it was really freeing for me in so many ways.
It shows in the clips that I've listened to and the videos you posted on Facebook. It shows that you have another sense of freedom and emotional commitment in your songs above and beyond what you already had. And what I really appreciate about you, and I think I'm willing, in fact, I don't think I'm willing to bet that your fans appreciate about you along with me, is that you are so honest and sincere, forthright, and authentic with your emotions in the songwriting aspect itself and in the delivery of the song. And you're taking so many fresh perspectives and fresh approaches, like your song, How to Dismantle a Life, has been heralded as a fresh perspective, almost an uplifting way to go through a breakup or a divorce. It's very healing and very hopeful. And of course, I'm all about healing and hope, and that's why I'm doing this radio show. And knowing that, like everybody else on the planet, you've gone through your share of loss and adjustment and change, grief, joy, happiness, etc. You bring that raw, sometimes authentic emotion into your songs, and you are almost fearless to express it. At the same time, I find as one of your listeners that it's expressed in such a way that just listening to it provides me with hopefulness and healing about issues I may be dealing with in my own life. And so if we multiply that by all of your listeners, to me, the biggest compliment I can give you is you're setting all this wonderful energy in motion of fresh perspective on life. And the fact that you're saying that, having a producer such as Troy Miller, where you had the freedom to just focus on yourself as a narrator, as an emoter, as a singer, and putting all of those wonderful things together gave you another sense of elevation in your work. Really is satisfying for me to hear, for your sake, Halie. And I'm just delighted for you with this album. I've been so excited. I was part of your, of contributing to your GoFundMe campaign. How could I not? And it's so thrilling to see this album now released and ready to serve the public in the ways that I know it's going to. So your composition, there seems to be a lot of common themes that appear in many of your songs. And I'd like to ask you, if you're willing to tell us, what inspired your compositions and this common theme these common themes that we hear in your songs?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of things that make multiple appearances throughout. It's by no means a theme album. those exist out in the world, and those can be really cool. But this is more of sort of an autobiographical journey through a lot of a really big surge of growth experiences that have happened for me, particularly in the last 10 years. But really, it's a lifelong path, as anybody I'm sure could relate. But a lot of the themes for me that have made their way into my music this time around, particularly. There's a lot of nature themes, and as you introduced at the beginning, my growing up in Alaska and later on in Oregon really that's had a major impact on who I am as a person and how I see the world. And I think when you grow up in a place where you are surrounded by and so humbled by nature from your earliest memories, that makes a big difference. That changes a person at the cellular level in some way. I've always had I've revered nature as something that I'm a part of. I'm a small part of, and that is so rich in its ability to show us how to live and give us lessons and kind of cut us down to size and let us rise higher than anything else. So it's this really amazing elemental force in my life, literally. And so those kinds of things, the thoughts that nature brings to mind for me really make their way into imagery. So the title itself, of course, of the album is From the Wild Sky. And for me, that symbolizes freedom. It symbolizes where the nature of where inspiration comes from. It comes from somewhere outside of myself. It comes from somewhere in the stardust, right? That Joni Mitchell line, we are all stardust. And I really feel that when I'm creating. I feel this sort of sense of the source of all of this is beyond my understanding, and it's from somewhere out there. But those images of things that have to do with the sky or the sea or the ground, these really root themselves in my songs. Like the song Wild Birds is almost entirely actually about sort of that journey of humbling myself to know, even from childhood, which is what the first verse is about. There's a reference to one of my very first memories of being 3 years old running through the forest and being just awestruck, but at the same moment of time where I'm trying to catch these wild birds in this bird cage that I found in a garage in my babysitter's house, falling and realizing, it kind of was this amazing epic experience where it was this adventure, and all of a sudden I'm humbled like the human being that I am. And it was this really profound experience for my little brain. And, things that impact us the most sometimes are these things where we're stunned by how little control we have, and in some ways it's a beautiful thing.
Stunned is a good word, and I'm sure that you were, and what a life lesson. The birds are wild.
Exactly. They're not for us to capture, and in some ways creativity is the same way. It's not for us to own. We're all passing through.
I saw a post on Facebook today that just really caught my attention. One of my dear Facebook friends had posted it and said, the bird sings not because it has an answer, but because it has a song to sing. And Halie, that really stood out to me, and I thought about myself as a singer-songwriter. And yes, I think we all wish to solve the world's problems. We all see that, we're humans, and we can certainly upgrade the quality of our lives and our planet. I think we all agree this is very important. And I thought, why do I sing? I sing because I have a song. And when I listen to your music, I hear that you have that same song. And I can hear in your music your Alaskan roots, that you do have this very deep tie to nature, and that it has shaped you, and how you come at your music with so many images. And while I'm talking about images, the artwork, the cover artwork on your album is stunning. Just absolutely stunning. And people have said if you're going to buy one album this year, make sure it's From the Wild Sky. And if you're just a lover of visual art, you could buy the album just for the cover. Of course, that would be only a small portion of the benefit of the album, because the music is so exquisite from top to bottom, Halie. So, if I may ask you you're so welcome. I'm always so happy to say these wonderful, sincere things to other artists. Just a couple more questions, because I know we're coming to the end of our time together today. I hear this from my own musical ears. I hear this. This recording has so many textural layers. I know what it's like in a recording studio when you have all the luxury of the studio, and then you take it out live, and it's a different venue. So I'm asking you really from a technical perspective, and yet an artistic perspective. Since the recording has so many textural layers, how will you be performing these songs live during your upcoming tours?
That while we were making the album, that was one of the biggest challenges in my mind. Was like, this is all amazing, but how am I going to replicate this? Because some places, like on the songs "Well Loved Woman" and "Roots," which were written essentially as a cappella pieces done that way, and in the studio they essentially retain that identity through a lot of the arrangements, but like they have at one point 25 voices singing one part, right? How do you recreate that? You can't.
Yeah.
There are some songs that definitely are are more simple in nature to begin with. But so what I'm in my tours, I'm going to Japan and Korea here next month, and just a couple weeks I'm going to Cleveland and Indiana and Montreal. And in these places, there's all completely different combos of musicians. Some of them are only trio shows, and other ones are quintet, and so not all the parts can get covered all the time. So what I'm having to do is sort of figure out elementally what's the nugget of truth that needs to happen with these songs. And so often, it's so easy to get wrapped up in trying to get every detail to come forward of something that, of the things that I love in these songs. But what really it comes down to is the subject matter, is the words. And as long as we're really doing justice to the melody and the meaning, then they translate wonderfully. They can translate to just a guitar and a voice. And that, I guess that's what I always have to remember when I'm feeling like, oh, but it doesn't sound just like the album. Well, it never will sound just like the album because, for one thing, I'm a jazz vocalist so much at the time that it's made its way even into when I sing pop music. I improv a lot of stuff. But it never sounds the same way twice, and that's kind of the magic of it. So I think part of it is just like applying the art of letting go, which is what so much of this album talks about, to the live performance and allowing it to sort of breathe in a different way in different contexts. And the players that I get to work with on all these tours, I'm also going to Europe a little later this summer, so I think it's like 5 different regions of the world that I'm going to the next 5 weeks, or in the 5 weeks of July, are all amazing artists in their own right, and they'll bring something new to it every time. So I trust the songs.
They will, and that's the magic of live. And of course, you're completely comfortable singing with a full orchestra and a chorus, right down to singing with a guitar and everything in between. And I think that this is going to be a very exciting tour for you. And as we say, every show will be different. And you spoke magic words. What are the essence of the lyrics? And that message in the moment. One final question, then: what is it about this album that you are most proud of or most excited to share with your fans around the world? So there are 2 big words there, proud and excited. So what's the story here, Halie?
So I'm most proud that I listened to the insistent voice, even past my own sort of, I have all these self-doubts. Every artist does, right? I have a lot of insecurities. When ideas come to me, I don't always trust them. I don't always think that they're necessarily going to be cherished by other people in the same way that I cherish them. There's that vulnerability. But I'm glad I took a chance. I'm glad that I finally listened to some of the people around me, too, who were like, you've been talking about this for so long, you just need to do it. I think you won't feel satisfied until you do it. They were totally right. And my heart was right about it, because now that the album is out there, I feel so proud of it, of the fact that it's there, that I could foster it into the world and really make a statement that I can stand behind 100%. And I feel like it's really this chunk of my soul that is for better or worse, having a light shown on it, that I feel like I'm really excited to share in that. Even though it's terrifying, I think other people also feel some of these same things that I've experienced and that I wanted to talk about. And like you were saying, you know, when you hear somebody sharing their soul and you can relate to it, it's so freeing for both people. It's freeing for the person who's saying it, and it's freeing for the person who's receiving it. And what I'm most excited about is hearing all of the feedback from people who've thus far heard the album, who are really relating. And I feel like it helps everybody when we're honest and when we're vulnerable. It helps people to find their own truth in whatever's being said.
That's so well and so beautifully spoken, Halie. And again, I congratulate you on these enormous successes you've had. And I really want to applaud your courage as an artist myself. I know what it takes to be vulnerable. I know what it takes to put it out there. And it is huge. And when we have that ratification from our listeners, and we know that it's actually serving beyond sometimes what we can even imagine or we never could have imagined, it is so gratifying, and I think that is something worthy of being very proud about and very excited. And, of course, you're headed off to go to many other countries and take the gift of your own personal presence and your wonderful music. And I just wish you a fabulous tour coming up. I wish you huge success with this album and many more to come behind it. So what a treat to have a chat with you today, Halie, and I thank you for taking time out of your very hectic schedule to do this. So I just want to leave our listeners with where they can explore more about Halie and get to know her better, and where they can buy this wonderful album that's already on the market for us. So the website, Halie's website, is HalieLoren.com, and I'm going to spell that. It's HalieLoren.com. And there's a web store as well, and I encourage you to buy this album. And that web store is HalieLoren.bandcamp. I'm going to say that again. I'll start that all over again. So it's HalieLoren.bandcamp.com. That is a tongue twister. Let's see if a host can pull this off one more time. HalieLoren.bandcamp. Nope, there I go. Oh, people are going to remember. HalieLoren.bandcamp.com. Oh my goodness, that's we're all going to remember that the host could not pronounce that. My goodness.
It's okay. Of course, it's a long one.
Yes, it is. Thank you for making excuses for me, Halie. I'm laughing at myself. So, of course, Halie is on Facebook. She's on Instagram and Twitter. And, of course, if you want to go to her YouTube channel and subscribe and watch her YouTube videos, you're in for a treat. So, Halie, again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to talk with us and share yourself with us in such an intimate and wonderful way. And, again, I wish you the best. And, ladies and gentlemen, my dear listeners, we have been talking with Halie Loren today, and I wish all of us an excellent rest of the day, whatever that may happen to be. I'm going to work on speaking English now, and I may do better with Spanish or whatever, my version of English. I hope everyone's laughing with me. And, Halie, again, yes. Final comment from you, Halie, because I can't. You please.
You. I was going to tell you that it's been wonderful to talk to you too, and thank you so much for letting me, come and talk about all of this stuff, all of the music and everything behind it. It's really, really nice to speak with you and to hear your perspectives as an artist as well. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're very, very, very welcome. And I wish all of our listeners a good day. Thanks so much now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the show and host. This podcast and its content are not intended to diagnose or treat any medical or mental condition or substitute for proper professional care in this regard. You've been listening to the Deidre Reigel Hope and Healing Radio Show, where your voice matters. We hope you have enjoyed this podcast and found inspiration for your own life. If you would like to be a guest on this show, please contact us at drhoperadio@gmail.com. That's drhoperadio@gmail.com. I'm Oliver Dill on behalf of all of us here at the Deidre Reigel Hope and Healing Radio Show, wishing you a day full of joy and goodness.